The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Welcome to another episode of the 15-Point Plan podcast. My name is Ryan Park Greigg, and as always, I'm here with my amazing co-host, Jacqueline Smith. Today, Jacqueline, we are getting to dive deep into one of our favorite books and habit number one from Brendon Burchard's High Performance Habits, right?
Absolutely. I love this book. So I'm really jazzed for these next episodes just to go deeper on each of the habits. Today, we're going to talk about seeking clarity. And both Ryan and I, we've read this book before, so we're going through it again alongside you. So if you are reading this book or have already read it and want to revisit it with us, we'd love to hear your feedback and connect with us on social media or whatever. But seeking clarity, Ryan, I personally loved the three intentions that he talked about in this section. Who are you becoming?
Mm-hmm.
What skill are you working to master? Like that future person that you want to become, what skill will they need to have mastered? So what are you learning? And then what are the three primary feelings that you want to experience and generate?
Right.
I love, those are my main three takeaways, and I could dive into them, but what were yours?
Well, I love that idea as well, Jacqueline, that when you seek clarity, you're really becoming intentional and you're living a life that's intentional and not in a life that is proactive and not reactive. A life that is more by your design. You're clear on what you want out of life. You're clear on your goals in your life. And I love the idea of being clear on not just who you are, but who you want to become. And by having strong enough goals in your life that are going to allow you to get to that place and to become a different person along the way. But ultimately having the clarity so that you know exactly what that looks like. If you're not clear on what that looks like, how can you have a goal to get there?
Yeah.
So this number one habit of seeking clarity and being ultra intentional in your life, I think is such a key foundational building block for the rest of the habits of being very clear on who we want to be, the time that we want to spend doing that, the things that we need to learn becoming that. And so it's just a fun subject to dive a little bit deeper on. And I love your idea of, you mentioned this date with yourself. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, so he talks about in the book, spending time deciding who, not just like you said, who are you? A lot of emotional intelligence and self-awareness talks about who we are, but actually who am I intentionally trying to become? Who am I growing into? And what feelings am I wanting to cultivate in my world? And so when he said, in order to cultivate that future self, or even like you talk about, Ryan, in order to really go after a goal, you have to spend time visualizing that goal and visualizing that person that you want to become. And so our team and I were talking about it a few weeks ago, and I had come up with this idea of, wow, what if every day we spend 5 minutes just closing our eyes? I mean, you could do this in your car before you go into the house at the end of your day, or, in the morning. Doesn't matter when you do it. But just to close your eyes and spend 5 minutes with your future self. And have you seen those? I mean, they're all over social media. I had coffee with my younger self,
Right.
A lot of this, going back to our younger selves, the child, the child within. But what about spending time with the future self that we envision? What do they look like? What do they wear?
Right.
How are they dressed? What are they focusing on? What are they thinking about? What do they feel like? What does it feel like to be around them? Or what do you want it to feel like to be around them? And I just thought that was such a cool mindfulness exercise to have a daily 5-minute date with your future self. We talk about spending time, I need time for me.
Right.
What if you took some time to be with the person you want to be?
Right. I think that's such a cool practice. And it absolutely checks off the mindfulness point from the 15-point plan, because if we're spending a few minutes a day thinking about the person that we want to become, or even better yet, I love that idea of spending time with the person that we want to become. The more we do that, again, we're seeking clarity on what that person looks like, feels like, sounds like. What would it feel like to be around them? What would it feel like to be an outsider and to hang out with that person? We're getting ultra clear on what that's going to look like. And the more clear we are and the more time we spend doing that, the more likely that person is to become a reality. So this is 100% checking off the mindfulness point from the 15-point plan, because we're sitting and you didn't say spend an hour, you
No.
know, you didn't say you got to spend an hour. Everybody's got 5 minutes. You could
Right.
do it in 5 minutes right when you wake up. You could do it, like you said, in 5 minutes in between a meeting. But
Mhm.
if you purposefully, intentionally spent that 5 minutes with what your future self could look like, what would that do for you? And would that get you closer to becoming that future self, as long as you're clear on what that looks like? So I love that idea. And I love being able to check off the mindfulness point by doing that.
Yeah, and I think too, like they say, if you don't grow intentionally, you just kind of grow by default, And so, um, kind of adding on to that, he talks about, okay, so that future self, what, what skills would they need to acquire? Let's say you're talking about, like, okay, who am I going to become in the next 5 years? And in the book, he uses the example of, like, he was a high performance coach and he was getting into that space. He was learning everything he could. And he thought about, okay, what skill am I going to need in order to be the number one high performance coach? And he realized that it wasn't necessarily learning more about high performance. It was, for him, it was about learning how to do email marketing
Right.
and video marketing. And
Right.
so he went deep on that,
Right.
and look at him now. So, it's not just like, okay, who do I want to become? That's the starting point. But what skills would that person in the future need to have mastered?
Right.
So it could be like public speaking. Well, you don't have to wait to become that person. Like, you can start doing things now to cultivate that person. If they're a public speaker, well, let's start doing some public speaking now.
Right.
Let's start learning about that. Let's start taking some courses, maybe signing up for, Toastmasters or like some sort of public speaking class. Start doing some webinars. Just
Right.
start. And
Right.
so that was, really powerful to me, is like, who do you want to become? And then what skills would they need to have?
And you said that word start a handful of times there. And I think that's the most important part. And when you look at somebody like Brendon Burchard, who is the number one or one of the number one business and personal development coaches in the world, and you look at him now, you go, oh my gosh, he's so polished. He's so dialed. His productions are incredible. He speaks for 10,000 people. But you can easily find some of his older videos. And he talks about that. He said, look, I had no idea how to make these videos, but I
Mhm.
started to figure it out. And I started somewhere. And he's like, I would jump in front of the camera and I would mess up 10 times. And it's like, so you go into the learning category of the 15-point plan.
Yeah.
What are the things that we need to learn? And can we be, I think a hard part is, can we be okay being really maybe not great at something to start, but just working through that, knowing, you know what, I have to get through these more challenging times, because on the other side of that is the person I want to become. So I'm going to, if it's like you mentioned, public speaking, I'm going to go to this Toastmasters thing and I'm probably not going to be great at it. But you know what? That's okay, because I'm going to get the reps in. And when I get the reps in, I'm going to get one step closer to becoming great at it. And as long as I'm determined on my goal and who I want to become,
Mhm.
you just got to keep chipping away at that. So we got the mindfulness category checked. Now we got our learning category checked, and we got our time box checked. By
Mhm.
really seeking clarity and following this high performance habit, we're really checking off a few boxes from the 15-point plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can also check off the goal, because we don't have
Definitely.
to think about our goals as just like, I mean, not just, but climbing a mountain like you're going to do, right? That's an awesome goal. Or we think about financial goals, health goals, but what about just like becoming goals?
Yeah.
Those are probably the most important goals, because you can accomplish all sorts of things in life, but you can inadvertently become someone that you don't want to be if you're not intentional about cultivating that. And so I think it's like keeping you aligned, and helping you make decisions along the journey when you have clarity about who you're choosing to become, because
Hmm.
you could accomplish any goal, right? So let's take a realtor, you want to close, 50, sales in 1 year. If that's your goal, you could do that any number of ways, and you could
Right.
do that and become any number of, types of people. Or do you want to do it in a certain way where
Right.
I want to do it with joy? I want to do it with an attitude of service. I want to be known for my generosity and my enthusiasm for helping people. That's different. Now I have a little more clarity on how I'm going to reach that goal of my 50 sales, not just the 50 sales, but who I'm going to be along the way. And I think that's more powerful.
Yeah. And another thing that Brendon said in that section was that clarity drives consistency and confidence. When we're clear on what we want, when we're clear on that goal, we're going to be more confident along the way because we have a much stronger idea of what that's going to look like and how we want to get there. Again, with your 50 homes example, if we've never sold a home before and we want to go sell 50 homes and we think, okay, I'm just going to like go into the office and I'm going to start calling people, or maybe I'll start doing open houses, or maybe I'll start doing this. Well, that's not very clear on how we're going to do that. We're probably going to lack confidence in each one of those areas.
Yeah.
Whereas instead, if we say, okay, Jacqueline, I'm going to do 6 open houses a week. I'm going to do one every day, and I'm going to do them from this time. And I'm going to learn the things I need to learn to be the high performer of open houses. You're going to get to your second, your third open house, and you're going to have so much more confidence than if you're ping-ponging all over these different areas, learning things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I'll mention that really hit home for me was Kate. Kate was kind of the star of the show in this chapter. Kate was so good at her job. All her friends loved her, thought, the world of her, but she was just going through the motions and she was unhappy. But I know a lot of people that are like Kate. I've been Kate.
Right. Same.
And what he talked about was when you lose your love of learning because you get so comfortable and you're good at stuff and you stop learning, and how that impacts so much. And that just by her rekindling her learning, and it revived her. It revived her family life. It revived just her own vitality and her joy and excitement, just learning. And so I think sometimes that learning point, we kind of, I don't know, it's just there. We check it off. We read something, we learn something, but we don't realize how important that point really is.
Well, absolutely, because after a while, with anything we do, if we get, like Kate, maybe really good at it, or we get to a certain level, we get complacent. And with that complacency comes boredom. And with boredom it becomes this ripple effect of boredom. So it's just like with Kate being a high performer in her job, but because she was so complacent and bored doing that, it rippled out to the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And that's so easy to happen to us, is that when we get bored, we get complacent. And when that happens, we just kind of show up. Like you said, we just go through the motions. And that's a dangerous place to be. And learning is such a great way to get out of that and to reinvigorate ourselves.
Yeah. Today I went for lunch with this really cool lady. She's the general manager of this really awesome hotel, the Indigo Hotel on the waterfront in Vancouver here. It's their number 2, only to the one in the Galapagos. Yeah.
Galapagos. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And so like she's badass. She is a high performer. And the reason why we met was because she got introduced to me by a friend, and she's, starting the journey to get her pilot's license.
Oh,
and
cool.
part of the reason why she did that was because she just needed another challenge, that she'd been doing this for a few years. She's really good at it. She's getting invited to speak on stages and whatnot. And she was kind of like starting to go down the trail of Kate, and so she's doing this, and that's kind of where I was at. And as challenging as that journey was, I can see now how it really did rekindle something in me, a fire. Like it's like my fire was rekindled again, my fire for learning. So.
Right. Yeah. And it's really incredible how learning can do that, and how having goals, and maybe kind of crazy goals, like you mentioned, this mountain that we're going to climb and try to set a Guinness Book World Record. Like I went for a probably 2-mile hike this morning. And just, part of the training for that. And I thought to myself, well, this wasn't too bad. 2-mile hike. It's only 22 more of these that we'll be doing in 24 hours. Okay, I can do that. If I can do this, I can do 22 more of these. And then of course I laughed going, dude, you're crazy. And that invigorated me. That went, wow, like, what have you done? What have you signed up for? Like, this is cool. I have to keep training now. And it gave me that little bit of excitement or a lot of excitement.
I'm so excited that I'm going to be able to say that I know someone that has like a world record. So
yesterday I saw, so over the last couple of years, the world record for pull-ups in 24 hours has been broken a couple times. Do you know what the world record is as of yesterday?
No, I can't even do one pull-up, Ryan. So no, I don't know the answer to that.
And the reason I'm saying that, so yesterday a gentleman broke the world record, maybe 2 days ago now, broke the world record for pull-ups in 24 hours with, I believe it was 11,707 pull-ups.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
11,707 pull-ups. And the reason that I thought this was so neat was two reasons. Number one, that I was blown away. But number two, I saw his Guinness World Record plaque and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have one of those soon.
You're going to have one. That is so amazing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that quote. What are you going to do with this one wild and crazy life? So
that's right.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to continue taking a journey through this book. We hope that you take 5 minutes to have a date with your future self. And Ryan, any last words for the good?
That date with your future self will be well spent. And I hope you enjoy that time with your future self. One of the best dates you could possibly go on. What a great way to look at life and be intentional and seek clarity. As always, check all of our podcasts as well as our entire podcast network at winmakegive.com. And you can ride with Jacqueline and I on our journeys on social media, Jacqueline Ray Smith and Ryan Park Greigg. We thank you for listening and we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.